I don't know. It was just something inside, I just didn't feel excited about the role I was in. And I thought there was more for me. I really wanted to get into business as soon as possible. And I saw this as a shortcut.
This is Lean Into Lead, raw conversations, real leadership, real responsibility. I'm Trevor Muir. Let's get started. I want to do a huge shout out. This is an exciting podcast for me for a number of reasons. One, the person that I'm going to interview here is not only a good friend and somebody that I admire, but he also is the show sponsor for the month. Versys Group has sponsored Lean Into Lead. And so very grateful for that and super excited to have you on the show, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Trev. Good to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. So I want to jump in to this because we do have a limited amount of time, or I would talk to you all day. But so when you started, what was the decision that got you to decide to, be an entrepreneur? And I don't mean just in Versys, to not take a normal path and a traditional route of just, going and getting a real good job. And I know you've had a few. So what was the catalyst? What is the thing that made you say, screw it, I'm not going to have the security?
Yeah, oh man, I started in the trades pretty early, and I don't know how far I want to go, but I started at the age of 13 in electrical instrumentation, did a registered apprenticeship program, get Bouchard Electric, and then Syntec, and then Pronghorn. And then with you at Caltech or CTI, I think that's when I decided to make the move. But honestly, I've just always dreamed of being in business, through my childhood, and starting in the trades was amazing, but I couldn't see myself becoming a business owner, doing electrical or instrumentation, having an electrical company right away. I was pretty young. And so when I was 21, it must have been 20, I was finishing school up, getting my, just getting through my instrumentation ticket. But I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure a lot of the viewers here have read.
Great book.
It just Robert Kiyosaki, really does a great job of explaining, the cash flow quadrant and just the different types of investors, and it just really resonated with me. And I finished my fourth year, I think in maybe October of what year would have been. I think that was 2021. And I had a booster juice in Calgary. I moved from Grand Prairie, but I moved to Calgary to run this booster juice that I partnered with my uncle of Red Deer to start. And I think by January, I think it was like January 1st or 2nd, we took ownership of an existing store. And I was thrown into it, and it was a great experience.
I think it's awesome, and there's something in this. You finish your ticket, and you're at a time in your life then where you can really start to make some decent money comparative to all the years it takes to get to that point. And right at the moment that you did that is when you were like, I'm going to go start a booster juice.
Yeah.
And I think this speaks to, and what I want the listeners to understand is, there's a lot of people who out there who have good careers and have good jobs and have gone to school and have got a trade and finished and kind of, I think, feel stuck. And I think they feel like, now I've done this and now I'm making the money. And I don't know if everybody out there, I know that not everybody out there is really truly feeling fulfilled. They're like, they're living their purpose, but they get to this place in life where, it's like, well, this is what I do now because this is what I went to school for. You didn't do that. As a matter of fact, right at the time that you could have started to really maximize the monetization of your trade, you decided to go do something different. And so what is it that makes you, be able to make that decision and then jump?
It sounds, I guess, easy now. Like looking back, everything kind of makes sense. Like I think Steve Jobs said that it you just got to look back and see how the dots connected. But I had a great position at where, the company I worked for, and I was on a maintenance run that was like 10 minutes from my, but I don't know. It was just something inside, I just didn't feel excited about the role I was in. And I thought there was more for me. I really wanted to get into business as soon as possible. And I saw this as a shortcut because it was a franchise. I knew it was a system. I believed that people were in general, moving up fast food and getting into healthier options. Yeah, I just really wanted to be a part of that movement. And, it just jumped.
Was there ever a times, and I think this, when we'll talk more about sort of how you got into Versys and when you started that as well later on, but was there a time, you make the decision, you go, you quit the job and that pays you well, you go and do the booster juice. Was there ever a moment where you were like, maybe I made the wrong decision, or like, shit, this was not exactly what I expected?
Yeah, when we bought the store, it had already been. It was a corporate store, and it was actually one of the highest revenue stores that they had. So out of like 150 stores, it was in the top three for many of the months because it was beautiful. I could see the mountains from the front desk, and it was in this little. It was in West Hills, Calgary, so it was right beside a movie theater and a bunch of other really great some whatnot. And um, it was an awesome store. But when we took it over, it had existing staff. And, here I was 21, came from the field in Grand Prairie. I didn't have, any friends or family in Calgary. And, I was really leaping. I was a fish out of water for sure. And, instantly dealing with young, predominantly female staff. I didn't have a lot of experience with that type of staff. And really like right away, we took on this group of people that were fairly emotional and just kind of, very young. And I had to get rid of the manager who had been there for about 6 months. And that was a hard decision, but there just wasn't enough revenue to support, the two of us. And then immediately after that, I had like staff member after staff member. I could just find that they were trying to kind of pull down the store. I had to, they're just giving things away to their friends. They were really loyal to the old manager and whatnot. Kind of right away, I had to immediately deal with a bunch of turnover and turnover that I had to, invoke myself. I was 21. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew it wasn't working. I was having a lot of sabotage and just things getting stolen. And I was like, I got to deal with this. And so once I got new staff, I learned a lesson, about that. And then from there on, just kept it growing. I had a lot of loyal customers that thought it was, they were just awesome. And I loved hanging out with them. But there's other lessons there from franchises where you're very limited on your the food and drinks that you give them, even though it's minus 40 and your staff doesn't, or the client don't want a frozen drink. I wasn't allowed to serve them tea. Yeah, that was another lesson. I don't know,
Think
just it's
I think
crazy.
something, and it kind of shaped from just what you shared and knowing a little bit about Versus and the journey of Versus. It sounds like actually some of what you learned there, and especially on the people side of it, because I know that you're big on hiring right, and I'll let you kind of speak to that more in a bit. But I wonder if some of that was learned from some of the experiences of a booster juice, where if you get the wrong people, it can really cause some havoc and be cause you more grief and be more difficult.
100%. Yeah. Versus is a technical service business. It's all about the people. 95% of our revenue is people. So it's all about the strength of the teams. It's all about just managing expectations of not only the client, but also the staff. Because we have a lot of road warriors, a lot of our projects are in the field. We're starting up facilities that are very complex. It can be challenging at times. A lot of our guys are out of town for months on end, and working a 6-in-1 shift. And so a lot of times we have to. I don't want to break up families. I want the staff to be able to spend time with their families, and so we have to like talk with the clients and explain why it's important for that individual to go home and go to a birthday party or whatever it may be. And yeah, it's tricky for sure. I'd say expectations and really building strong teams, because we're only good at so many things. Unfortunately, I think as humans, we're just not good at and it's very much about setting up the team to succeed so that it's got 360 degrees of strength opposed to one strong person, which it doesn't, I don't believe it exists.
Yeah, I love that. And so you talked about how important it is for you at Versys and culturally for, for families to have time together. And I know that you do reach out to clients and you help juggle people around, and the team works really well together. I understand that. It's something that I know is core to you as well. So, we'll fast forward and you went from Booster Juice back into the trades for a bit, and then you ended up starting Versys. And when you started Versus, one of the things that I really admire about you, Nick, there's plenty, but one of them is how you've been able to incorporate really, what I feel is really good balance, and your family is a high priority to you, and so is Versus. And so, I mean, you do some amazing trips with your kids. You spend a lot of time with your family. On top of that, you manage the business really, really well, and you lead very effectively. How do you manage all that, and how do you prioritize the priorities?
Well, it's tricky for sure. I really appreciate that. I think I feel like the, my kids. I have twins that are turning 10, boy and girl, and we have a motorhome that we do a month trip every August. They know we're going to visit the clients in Duluth and Illinois and Wisconsin, and we visit as many job sites as we can. We had a fifth wheel that I put three sets of tires on because we drove
Wow.
all around like Idaho, Washington, down to Texas. And that's when I was trying to find the next location. And we miled that poor fifth wheel out. So now we have a motorhome. It's a little easier, it's like a hotel on wheels for us, when you're eating out all the time and staying in hotels, it's just a lot more work. And, we talk about it, we talk about why we're visiting sites. We talk about, I've had them on job sites, in the motorhome where I was walking around. I try to bring them to as many business meetings as I can. If it's a client who has a family and I know they're going to be fine with it, I'll have to bring them so they can learn about it. They're very involved with the business actually.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many lessons for them, and I think again, like that's something that's not, that's not a typical sort of journey for people when they start businesses to be able to incorporate their families. But I love that you do that, and I think there's a lot of lessons in that for sure. One of the other things that I know you do is you travel. You'll take your kids and you'll travel and you'll take extended periods of time, sometimes, a few weeks to maybe a month away from the business to be with your family. I know you've been to Africa, Australia. There's probably way too many places to mention. But so, how did you structure your business so that you can actually go and effectively do that? Because one of the things as entrepreneurs, and I struggled with it really, really bad, is as much as I was the leader who cared and the person who was there for everybody, I was also the major bottleneck. And if I went away for a week, I had trained the entire organization that for anything major, they had to come to me. Um, and all of a sudden I'm not there. And then I would wonder why my phone would blow up and my emails would blow up when I was gone for a week, for 3 days. So how did you structure your business so that you could actually go away for that length of time? And when you go away, two parts to this, and when you go away, do you have like, is it like I'm away and I'm in Africa, but I'm on my phone 7 hours of the day?
It's a balance. Obviously, like, the last trip we did, I did spend some time on the phone and I joined some client meetings that were extremely important. We were trying to win a project and so there I was at midnight in South Africa on a teams meeting with the team, just to help push it across the line. Honestly, it's really, I think it's just empowering the team. Like I don't believe that I'm the strongest person in the company by any means. I'm a field guy from Grand Prairie. I spent a lot of time in the field. I was honestly pretty good at troubleshooting problems. I was not good at a lot of things though, and I just think like setting up a team to win so that they have the tools, so that they have the flexibility to learn mistakes on their own as well, because that's how we learn. And just giving them that attitude. Recently, I'd say I'm trying to incorporate more different leadership styles into our company. So, like, our industry predominantly has males, but I'm trying to incorporate more women in the company. So that they have a voice. There's a new book, Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Women leader influence in your business.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I've just noticed women communicate so much more effectively than men. And they just see a different side of the problem. I just really think that having more women in a business, having somewhat of a 50-50 balance,
Yep.
eventually that we're going to have an ability to make stronger decisions. And really, Ray Dalio talks about a meritocracy in a business. It's the best idea should win. And I'm not the loudest person, and or not the most senior person's idea. So really, I think for setting Versys Group up for success long term, it's about making the right decisions and making less mistakes.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the way that you look at business, and I think that is a testament to, to you, and just how you are, kind of your nature and your character. But you always do, and I've known this, you always do you look to look at things differently, um to try, and you're a great troubleshooter, as you said, to try and figure out a different path to the same outcome. But I think by incorporating, and you really do it, like, you don't just talk about it, you actually do what you say. And culturally, I know you're building this organization that really empowers people and really gives a shit about them a lot, as human beings. There's some things that you and Cheryl do. Cheryl's next wife, by the way. And that you guys do, like, you have taken Versys from, not just that technical electrical instrumentation company, but also a company that has beings that care about each other, but has a massive impact on community and on people. And I don't want to miss that during this chat, because you've used it as a vehicle and a catalyst to do so much good for so many people. And kind of I know you have a lot of support, or maybe even, be pushed a little bit in this direction by your wife, but it's something that's near and dear to both your hearts. And please share on that, because it's really important for people to hear that you can build these amazing businesses that really do empower people, and that attract folks, and all the things you talked about, but can make a major difference in lives of others, even outside of your company.
Yeah, honestly, we stumbled across this phenomenon, but we suffered from infertility for years, and we tried everything, IVFs. We've had a surrogate. We tried different clinics. We tried everything. One of the last fertilities that we did, I think we spent about $30,000, and I think that was the time we actually got a surrogate mother to try to help us. And in the end, when it didn't work, we saved up the last of our pennies, and we went on a volunteer trip to Peru. And it was a tourism volunteer trip. And so Cheryl got placed at an orphanage school, and I got placed somewhere where I was just supposed to paint fences white. We compared notes at the end of the day, and she was just so inspired by these beautiful little children that were trying to speak English, and they didn't even have a bathroom. They had no food. They had no running water. Like, it was very rough. And I was just like, wow, I'm just painting fences. This is pretty lame. So I quit my volunteer gig and joined Cheryl the next day. And I was just like, how can I help? And they were like, well, it'd be really great if we had a greenhouse and we could start growing potatoes and actually sell the potatoes and make money, and we could use the rest of the potatoes to feed the kids. So I was like, done. So I went down the local hardware store in Cusco and bought I couldn't even get a cordless drill. I had to buy a hand drill, one of those old school ones with no power, and some really terrible drill bits, and some eucalyptus wood, and some really bad screws, and we, some poly, and we built a you know we built them a greenhouse. And they were just over the moon. But just watching the kids, like, they were just squatting everywhere and anywhere to go washroom. There's wild dogs all over the place, ready to attack these kids, and they had nothing. Like, it was crazy. So when Cheryl and I came back to Canada, we decided we were going to raise some money for them and have a fundraiser at a little community hall. And we wanted to raise money for toothbrushes and just, some medication and some food. And they were actually going to build a second level to the school, and maybe even get some running water and a bathroom. So I think that was our first ever fundraiser, and we raised about 8 or 9 grand for them. And it was mainly family and friends. Like, I don't know if you were there, Trev. I can't remember I remember your parents were
Yeah.
there because I was bidding against them on a
Yeah.
painting. But just, it just blew me and Cheryl away, the amount of friends and family that came to to that fundraiser. So we just kind of made it a thing. Every year or two afterwards, we did another fundraiser. We tried to find somebody that was in need. We've had a little boy named Alex that had progeria disease. I think we raised about 18 or 20 grand for him. There was Dreams Take Flight in 2019, right before COVID, and that was about 45 grand. That one was the biggest one we've ever done. Just earlier this year, we did one for Uncle Ronnie, who's unfortunately got some cancer in his brain. So hopefully, he's still working on that, on the treatments. Uh, and obviously we're praying for him so that he's becomes clear of that. But these fundraisers are just a great way to involve, friends, family, clients, anybody who wants to be involved. And it actually lifts everybody up and to support such a thing. And you make it something fun, make it a game. The last one was Price is Right. And,
It was so
we,
awesome.
we kind of went overboard on that, but it was really cool. And it just really brings the community together, and it's a lot of fun. We like to do that.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's a testament, and this is a major shout out to you and Cheryl and the community that be built, but also to Versys. I know that this is something that your team also rallies around, shows up for, and it's how you lead in life, but it's also how you lead in Versys. I know that Uncle Ronnie is somebody who has worked in your organization,
Hmm.
and so this is the type of stuff that you do for the people who are a part of your SurePoint or your Versys group, your Versys family. And it's really, I think it's really awesome you you do that, but you don't just talk about it and you don't separate the two. You found a way to really pull it all together. And uh, and I, I yeah, I think that that's something that extremely amazing. And I don't think that very, very many leaders or companies really do that well. And probably because they don't really know how to be honest with you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, if they did it, they would know. Like it's just crazy. I think it's just about jumping. Like you got to leap, and then for some reason the world catches you. And I don't know how to explain that, but you just got to jump. Like I bug other people. I'm like, we jumping off this cliff because we're doing it together, and we'll figure it out on the way down. And like 2 weeks before that Uncle Ronnie um, you know, fundraiser. Guy was working every minute to build all the games and the spinning, the Price is Right wheel and all that stuff. And like, it was stressful. And then we didn't even have that many people coming, and we were trying to figure out all the food and everything else. But everybody came together all at once. And I always tell Cheryl, I'm like, just jump and we'll figure it out as we go. And that's been in
Yeah.
every aspect of my life. It seems like business or, taking on a larger project that's a little bit scary, or jumping into a new vertical, or, like, or fundraisers or anything. You just got to jump and then not fail. Like you can't give up. You just got to go. But I don't know. So far it's worked out good.
I think that's an amazing kind of piece of advice for people who are in a point in their life or some place where they're feeling stuck. They want to try something, or at least they're sure they don't want to stay where they're at.
Hmm.
And I think you just said it. Just jump, and then don't fail. Trust that the universe is going to be there, and a support network's going to be there. And I think one of the biggest tragedies in life is burning up the few minutes that we do have in the 70, 80, 90, 100 years, if we get one of the fortunate few who get there, living with that fear. And I've always said that I would rather do something and find out that I wasn't that good at it, or it didn't work out exactly how I wanted, than to wonder how it would have been. And I don't want to be, an older person and with a bunch of regrets. So
100%. Yeah, I don't want to have regrets. We only have one life. You gotta test yourself, and it, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about it. Alex Hormozy talks about it. Tony Robbins. It's all there. There's been generations of people talking about this stuff. Napoleon. I look back
yeah,
to the old Stoics. They're talking about it too. So I don't know. There's something to it. You just gotta do it. And you know, one little story. I'm not trying to pump myself up, but like I was here in Texas. I saw these people doing these Ironmans and I was like, what are these people doing? And I don't swim. I don't even like to road bike. You know, I don't even really like to bike, but I can run a little bit. But I'm like, you know what? That's a good goal. I'm going to do that. And then I started to look at it and I'm like, ooh, actually this goal might take me 2 years because it's going to take, 1 year is not quite enough for me to be able to do it. But the 1 year later, I did a half. And then the second year, I was able to do the full year. So like, I like just having a crazy goal and doing it, sign yourself up and go for it, see what happens.
And yeah, so I mean, you have a lot of humility, but I think that everybody needs to know Nick didn't know how to swim when he decided to do this.
No.
And 2 years later, you did a full, like you did an Ironman, and like that's the kind of person that you are, and that's how your conviction to setting big goals and then going for it. But you also achieve them, and so for all the listeners out there right now who are like, hey, I don't know if I should do this or not, and I'm scared, I've got the security, or that seems hard. Nick is giving you a roadmap on how to accomplish things in life that you're afraid to try. And that is, just do it. Set the goal, do it, jump off the edge of the cliff. I think that's great. And I can attest that, that this is not only the way that he leads in his family, but this is the way that he leads in his organization. So for anybody out there looking to join a really good organization and maybe interested in the trades, you should reach out to Nick. And with that, I want to ask you one last question. I always say that if I don't live to 80 years old in this day and age, if I don't get at least 8 years, I'm going to feel like I got gypped. Like I'm really going to be pissed off about it. But you're 80, 90, 100, 120 years old, and you get one conversation with your kids, one last one before you lay down and close your eyes for the last time. What do you tell them?
Well, I'm hoping to live to 120, but
Yeah, 120,
but
140.
140 maybe, yeah. But I'm 45 now. I feel like I've been through the ringer, but I love it because each time I learn more lessons and I'm able to make better decisions. But I think the lesson I'd want to just impose on the kids would be just don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Because it's easily
Yeah.
done. You just grab a new goal and do it, and pretty soon you'll be somebody else.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I could talk to you for 2 hours, Nick. I appreciate you coming onto the show and sharing a little bit about your journey and about your company and about the things that you've done, and be an example of what organizations can really truly do for other human beings. And so I applaud you for that. And with that, I just want to thank you again so much for being on here. And all the listeners, this is Lean Into Lead.
Thanks for having me, Trevor. Have a good day, everybody.